Buddy McMasterson 705 asks, to distinguish him from the other Buddy McMastersons.
The other 704 Buddy McMastersons?
But it's a good question.
Yeah.
The Pacific Island nations are each quite small. Why is it critically important to ensure these nations do not become Chinese vassals, i.e., or e.g., attempts to shift politics on the Solomons, i.e., how much more difficult is it to regain these islands in the event of a larger conflict? Parentheses, perspectives on logistical challenges of hopping, island terrain, weather, etc.
Well, that's like how many questions were in that one question?
Well, a bunch, but they're all right in Cleo's wheelhouse.
They are, and they're accurate, interlinked questions that are the questions being asked by Indo-Pacific Command, for example. So yes, some of them are geographically small in very large ocean territories, which just increases the importance of that piece of land. So from a logistical perspective, there's that old saying of amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk logistics. So those specks, the more distant they are and the more isolated they are, the more important they are, because that's where you can resupply or go into harbor or things like that. So they are incredibly important. How difficult is it to regain? I would argue that right now it's not difficult to regain at all. All you need to do is send in the lawyers. Send in people who would help them extricate the corruption from their systems. And the local populations want sovereignty and independence and free exchange of ideas and religious freedom and all the things that you'd think they would. And they're a lot of honest, hardworking, principled people who, given the space to do that, would do it. But they're being strangled by this creeping ivy of corruption. So if you can help liberate them from the corruption, they'll make sure that they are those secure islands all the way across the region, and you won't have to try to go in kinetically, which is a horrific concept 80 years after 100,000 Americans died in that region the last time around.
Well said. How can we help fight the CCP? From Shannon Newman. Hey, Shannon.
So it depends on who you are. So what your personal toolkit is, but everybody can, and strengthening yourself, your family, your community, your society, is not just going to help you so-called fight the CCP, but fight any malign influence. Because the CCP is bad, but there are others out there that are also trying to create absolute chaos within free societies. So at the very least, help understand, if you're an American, why your country is really exceptional. Go back, take a look at some of those founding documents, try to understand your system, and try to figure out how to strengthen your system. And that could be get involved in the school board and make sure that the schools are teaching things that help strengthen communities and gain an understanding of why freedom is important. I mean, you'd think it would be self-evident, but sometimes it's not. And then if you do that, if you understand why freedom is important, you don't have to specifically explain why the CCP is a problem, because you'll see it, and you'll also see why other things are not great. So it's very hard to say specifically without knowing what somebody's individual options are. But at the very least, getting involved in your community and having these discussions and talking about why it's important is relevant. You guys?
All right. Scott Payne says, given the CCP's strategy to soft attack the USA using land acquisitions, fentanyl, infrastructure hacks, infiltrating universities, stealing intellectual property, and on over a time frame that greatly exceeds our election intervals, do we have any counter strategies that do not involve military assets and economic sanctions, such as supporting the people of China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan against the CCP or offering superior development project support globally? Do we think beyond 4 years?
That's sort of the long game issue we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So you can see, I mean, again, certain states are trying to pass legislation to keep the CCP out of farmland or out of critical infrastructure, things like that. So there are, it is a problem. It's not just 4 years. In many cases, it's 2 years because that's also a congressional cycle. But there are other mechanisms that can put things in place. So if your legislature, your state legislature, blocks CCP investment within a certain radius of a military installation, for example, yes, the next administration could come in and change it, but it takes an effort. So if you get control over the entropy in the system, if you over kind of the continuation in the system, then the other side has to fight to try to degrade that. So it's not, don't just give up on using the democratic process to achieve these goals. In fact, really don't. I mean, use it. And this applies to viewers everywhere, including Canada. But that long-termism, again, comes back to, I think, understanding that the fundamentals of free societies is the long-term plan. So reinforcing that aspect of the long-term plan, however you can, is a critical element of winning, of surviving.
Last question, probably.
Last question. This is from Zephyr Chan, and he actually has 3 questions, but I'm going to just ask one of them. What's the China policies of both U.S. presidential candidates?
So when is the show going out? do we know?
Let's assume we're talking about Trump and Harris.
Yeah. So for Vice President Harris, I don't know. Do you guys know?
Don't know much about it.
I don't know. And one thing that surprised me, or that I've sort of noticed over the last many years, is that it's very hard to know what a president is going to do once they take office. And like, for example, when Trump was first elected, one of the first things that happened is, I think it was in December of 2016, he took a phone call from Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. And I was like, is he stupid or is he brilliant? And like, it was just like, I still didn't know what to think. And then, his first couple of years, his China policy was like, when his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, were trying to like make these trade deals with China. And I just didn't think it was going in a good direction. Eventually that did change. And that administration took things in a very different direction, one that has set up the U.S. for a much stronger position against China. I wasn't clear what on earth Biden would do. I thought it might be a continuation of the Obama era policies, but it wasn't really. It was more of a continuation of the Trump era policies in many respects. And although I won't say his State Department has done a good job, he's pledged to defend Taiwan. He encouraged and signed the CHIPS Act. He's expressed support for some of the groups the CCP is harassing, like Falun Gong. I think, you just don't know. So what on earth would Harris do? And even what would Trump do? Because it's a different era now. It's a very difficult, unknowable answer.
Yep. Any other last minute ones?
Let's do one more question so Cleo can actually answer.
Did you find any, Shelley?
All right, I kind of want to answer the second part of this, but not the first part. So I don't know.
So answers.
So just read the question and
Okay, well, the question is from Tau GDS that says, I know it's come up a couple of times before, but I'd really like a discussion on what you all think a Confucian democracy would be like, the potential ways it could be similar or different than Western-style democracies. Also ask Cleo if she's willing to apologize on behalf of Canada for her nation managing to take the wonderful idea and national dish of the Isle of Man, cheesy chips and gravy, and ruined it on all 3 points by using fries, brownish water, and cheese curd instead.
Well, as a Canadian, I will apologize for anything. So let me begin by I can apologize in both official languages, since I think you're talking about the Quebec national dish of poutine, which, by the way, is also exactly the same way the leader of Russia is pronounced and spelt in French. So I think we've insulted that dish on multiple fronts.
But does the dish look good shirtless on a horse?
I think that dish it's just the dripping gravy over the lumpy cheese and the crispy fries.
Stop. We haven't had lunch yet. I'm getting me hungry.
We're back to your OnlyFans on,
The OnlyFans is just Chris eating poutine.
With no socks.
$9.95 a month.
Yeah.
People would pay for that, I think.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of finding out.
Yeah.
So yes, as a Canadian, and I think that the statement is normally, as a Canadian, I apologize, and then it's just kind of fill in the blank. So if you want it to be for poutine, it'll be for poutine. The only thing I won't apologize for is the War of 1812.
Ooh.